So let's, I guess, focus on, for starters, basics. So I think the first and most important thing with your inspection do's and don'ts is you've got to educate your buyers upfront on the inspection types, what each inspection does. You got to do all of that in a buyer's consultation up front, because if you are waiting to do that stuff after you are under contract, in this type of market, that is too late. You got to do that stuff up front. So in your buyer's consultation packets, you should have some information on what the purpose of the building inspection section in the contract is, how it works. So explaining how that those paragraphs in the contract work. You should also maybe tell them about the different types of inspection options. So in the buyer's consultation a packet that I've gone over before, I have 3 different pages on what's a general building inspection, what does it cover, how much does it cost approximately, but then I have things on termite, sewer, gas, radon, if they want to do mold or environmental, if they want to do what are other ones, structural inspections, any other of the extra different types of inspections. I have information on my buyer's consultation packet on all that stuff. So the buyers know upfront what they're approximately going to be looking at as far as spending on inspections, how the inspection process works, how they can negotiate those things. They've got all that info. So don't wait until you're scheduling your inspections to educate them on all that stuff. The next thing, the ASHI sheet. I've sent out a few weeks ago, I sent out a sheet from the St. Louis Association of Realtors, the most up-to-date as of March 2021 list of ASHI certified building inspectors. The reason why I think give them a sheet, whether it's in your building or whether it's in your buyer's consultation packet or whether it's just right before they're scheduling inspections, giving them the sheet is paper or email proof that you gave them options. So that way, if they have any issues with the building inspector that they choose and the building inspections they have done, you can at least go back to say, hey, look, you had options. Also, as soon as you get under contract, I think you need to schedule those inspections ASAP. So there are some buyers who they want to take things, one at a time and day by day. They get under contract. They want to, that first day, they want to worry about the earnest money in the title company. The second day, they want to worry about getting extra stuff turned into lender. And, some of these buyers, they don't get to worrying about their inspections until, a day or two into the contract. I think you need to get those inspections scheduled ASAP. We'll get to it a little bit later as far as advice for a 2021 market, but there are a lot of buyers agents and buyers that are shortening their inspection window to make things more attractive. So just to use an example, Kerlick team here in the South County office, they are trying to get all of their inspections done in 5 days, if possible. And that's on buying side and listing side. When they've got buyers, if they know they have to be competitive, they're just starting off with 5 days from the get-go. If they have the listing and they're representing the sellers, they're pressuring buyers agents via competition or via counter offers to adjust the inspection timeline down below the normal 10-day window. So get them scheduled ASAP. I have a little note in here about how I prefer the buyer to schedule their own inspections. If you're an agent and you want to be a part of that and you want to help them schedule those inspections, great. Some inspectors, they'll coordinate everything for you. So even if they don't have the termite inspector on their staff or the sewer inspector on their staff, they will find the subcontractor inspector for that specialty inspection type, and they will handle the scheduling for you. I prefer to have the buyer schedule it all, because buyers have their own work schedules. And I just think that rather than you being the go-between that, has to take this phone call and then call the other person, get their information, then call the other person back, that back and forth phone tag, I'd say just, have the buyer schedule their own inspections. That's at least my opinion. Some of these inspectors out there, they are creating their own full service inspection, the inspection company. So they have the termite guy on staff, they have the sewer lateral inspector on staff, they've got the radon equipment, they've got the HVAC gas testing equipment. So those people that have all that on staff, those are people that are easy to schedule things with, because you just call one person, they get it all set up. So but schedule them ASAP. That's the most important thing. Next thing, use showing time to schedule, but also confirm the inspection scheduling with another contact method. So the reason why I say use showing time is because showing time is set up so that way that information is sent not just to the listing agent, but also to the seller. So the advantage of that is you only have the contact information from the listing agent. You don't have the seller's contact information. If you schedule through showing time, you at least have the confidence that even if the listing agent drops the ball on communicating the inspection the inspection appointments to the seller, you know that showing time has at least made some sort of effort to forward that information to the seller. But then also confirm with another contact method, because there are some sellers who, once they get under contract, they're not paying attention to showing time messages. There are some sellers who are not tech savvy and they never paid attention to showing time. In this market, with all of the showing appointments that they are going to get before they go under contract, there are some sellers that are just going to be so sick of seeing showing time notifications that they are just going to start ignoring all of them. And they're just going to tell their listing agent, you deal with this, just tell me when it's over with. So confirm with another contact method, so that way nobody drops the ball and your inspectors don't show up on the day of inspection and the seller is in there packing up, or or maybe sleeping. I mean, we've had situations before where it's like a nurse who works the night shift and we show up and the person's asleep and we can't even get in the house. And you've got the building inspector and the termite guy and the radon guy and the sewer lateral guy outside all waiting, and you can't even get into the house. So follow it up with multiple contact attempts. So not just showing time, use another contact attempt too. Going back to the education to your buyer, make sure that you're reinforcing that they're not going to get a perfect house, especially in a market like this. I'm referencing the 85% rule for the perfect house. The statistics from the National Association of Realtors are that your buyer is on average only going to get about 85% of what they want out of their perfect house. I think it's going to be even less this year. We've talked about that in sales meeting and trainings before. It's probably going to be 50 to 75% probably in a market like this. So that's generally, that number is usually used to describe the house search. But I think it also applies to the inspections. If they can't find the perfect house, when they find a house, it's not going to be perfect by the time you get to closing. So make sure they're educated on that up front. Set expectations, because some of these buyers, they get into this inspection window and they think that, oh, this is my opportunity to get the seller to do everything to make it perfect. And that's not true. The inspection window is only meant to basically make sure that you can get valid occupancy and to reveal and negotiate latent defects. So reinforce the meaning of latent defects when you are educating your buyers. What that means is hidden, so it's not visible. So it's not disclosed up front on the seller's disclosure statement, and it's not visible ahead of time. That's what latent means. So you want to reinforce this to your buyers, because there are some buyers that, they want to use the inspection window to negotiate like stains in the carpet and like scratches and cracks in the walls and stuff like that. That's not latent stuff. I think latent defects can also apply to some of the fixtures and the appliances and things like that. When you're showing the house and you see that the furnace is super old, and the seller's disclosure, disclosed by the seller, says that the furnace is super old, when you get to the inspection and the inspector tells you, hey, guess what, this furnace is super old, it's probably going to die, that's one of those things where it can be hard to negotiate those things, because those were disclosed up front and they're clearly obvious. Reinforce that meaning of latent defects. That will help you with focusing your buyers on negotiating things that they didn't know about and are serious, rather than things that they knew all along when they were writing the offer for the house. They knew that, hey, the furnace looks like it's about to fall to pieces. Or, they saw the stains in the carpet or whatever it may be. Also, big thing for this year, I think you need to reinforce home warranty as a option. It's not the solution, but it's the option. The reason why I think you need to reinforce that this year is, I think more than ever in recent memory, buyers are not going to get a whole lot out of the inspection window. Reinforcing to them that, hey, if you're not going to get everything out of the sellers on the inspection negotiation, or you might have to buy this house straight up as is and not do any inspection negotiation, that home warranty could help with some of these things that you're taking on the house and not having the seller repair before closing. So anyways, again, the reason why I said it's not the solution, it's just the option, is it doesn't matter which home warranty company you're dealing with. They're all going to have fine print, and they operate like insurance companies. Insurance companies are out to find those fine print ways of them avoiding having to pay out on certain items that happen under your insurance policy. Same thing with home warranty. They are going to be looking for certain ways for them to not pay out the repairs that you may be requesting to be covered under the home warranty. There's a lot of stuff they will cover, but there's a lot of stuff that they're not going to cover. So don't promise them the home warranty as a solution, because your buyers are probably going to hear that and think that, oh, this is going to cover everything. I'm good to go. I'm all square. And that's not the case. That's just going to create a giant headache for you as the buyer's agent if you are leading them to believe that the home warranty is their end-all be-all solution. So it's an option, though. Another thing, inspection do's and don'ts. Review the seller's disclosure before writing the contract and before you are showing the home. And look for some of the serious items that are on there ahead of time. Look to see how old that roof is. In the state of Missouri, roofs that are only even just a few years old may have damage on it. It may have, shingles that are damaged. It may have hail damage. There may be, pock marks on the shingles, or what's it called, granular loss from the asphalt grains on the asphalt shingles that are, eroding away. In Missouri, because of the high winds sometimes, the high humidity, the hail, the tornadoes we get, big trees falling on houses, it's very likely that a roof will have damage on it, just after a few years. So when you are reviewing the seller's disclosure with your buyer before writing that contract, if the seller is disclosing that that house is over 10 years old, you can pretty much tell your buyer that, hey, when the inspector gets up there and they look at that roof, I bet you they're going to find something on that roof that they are going to point out as a repair item on their inspection report. It's pretty much a guarantee. A lot of buyers will fall back on, well, wait, I heard that roofs have warranties of like 20, 25, 30 years. That's manufacturer warranty. If there's actually, no issues that the real world has created for that roof, that's a manufacturer's warranty for the product. It's not warranting that there's, no hail damage or there's been no storms, or that house doesn't have a hot roof that's causing warping with the shingles. Again, going back to, conditions in Missouri, we just have conditions that, roofs won't get to that 20 to 30 year mark without any serious damage. So just, making sure that your buyers are aware of that up front. They know that, hey, they're probably going to, get an inspection report with those things cited on it. Educating people, that's the most important part. Furnace and AC, again, going back to latent defects, if they look old or they've been disclosed as old, the inspector is probably going to find something that they're going to recommend repair or replacement or, servicing on. They could be functioning fine. So from the seller's perspective, that furnace could still be blowing hot air. In the summertime, it could still be pumping cold air. But if it's over 10, 15 years old for those items, the inspector's probably still going to find something that they're going to recommend some sort of repair or service for. Hot water heaters. If it's more than 10 years old, again, something that the inspector's probably going to suggest something. And then the other thing you can do here, I sent out an email about this a few weeks ago, but you can take pictures of those appliance stickers and the numbers that are on those manufacturer stickers will tell you when it was manufactured, and that will give you an idea if the seller doesn't have info on when it was installed. It'll give you an idea of how old that thing is. So again, if you don't know how old it is right there then in the house, take a picture of that appliance sticker and you can look the manufacturer serial codes up online and it'll tell you approximately how old it is. So again, you can educate people before you even go into the house, or sorry, educate people before you even go into the inspection negotiation window. All right. I think you do need to, though, reinforce that you're not the professional inspector. Reinforce that to your buyer. You want to be able to point things out and make note of things, but you need to reinforce that you're not the pro inspector. So if you're in the home while you're there for the open house or for a showing, look at the exposed foundation for cracks, look at the plumbing, look for suspicious electrical work, look for these things that look, out of date or in disrepair or just don't look right. But just point those things out. Just point them out and say, let's remember to make sure the inspector looks at this. Be careful about what opinion that you give about the gravity of those things, about the seriousness of those things, about how much they cost or any of that stuff, because that could be verbiage that's getting you into trouble down the line where your buyer may be taking that as, fact and truth from a professional resource, when in fact, you are not the professional resource for those things. That's what we should be leaning on the building inspectors for. So reinforce that you're not the professional inspector. You can help them look for things, but when it comes to professional opinion for them to base their decisions on, you need to make sure that we are leaning on the professional building inspectors for those decisions. So, but doesn't mean you can't still look for that stuff. So, the thing about looking for foundation cracks and suspect plumbing and suspicious electrical work and all those other things, I look for those things just because I know those are the big things that the building inspector is going to make a big deal out of in their inspection report. So I'd rather just make sure that I'm preparing my buyers for that before we even get to the building inspection. All right, moving forward, more basics. When you are writing your inspection notice, you need to make it as clean and clear as possible, especially in this market. I advise everyone to use an addendum if you are going to be doing like multiple lines of inspection notice requests. And I advise everyone to type it out and not do it handwritten. If you are going to do it handwritten, make sure that you are using your absolute best handwriting as you can possibly do. Just an example, last year we had a situation where we had the seller, and I think the buyer wrote their own inspection notice and they handwrote it. I cannot believe that a realtor would have actually handwritten this inspection notice, but because it was so sloppily written and it was handwritten, it turned into a giant mess for that situation. And while that was all the buyer's fault and the buyer's issue for having written their inspection notice that way, handwritten and a sloppy job, it was still a giant headache for the listing agent and our seller to deal with. So whether it's the seller or the buyer that you're representing, these inspection notices, make sure that they are done clearly and typed out as best. If you are doing a very, very short list of inspection notice requests, so if it's a very short list, maybe you don't need an addendum. So what is an addendum? For those of you who are new that are on the call, what am I talking about with an addendum? Here's what I'm talking about. So on the inspection notice, so here's the inspection notice. We've got the property, the contract date, the buyer, the seller, and this is one of my buddies. And this is a few years old at this point, but on here, instead of me writing out specifically all the things that he wanted the seller to request, instead we just said, please see attached addendum A, and then using Microsoft Word or Google Sheets, I think it's called, or Google Docs, I can't remember. We basically created our own separate document that we called inspection notice addendum A. We put the contract number up at the top, we put the contract date number, we put the property address. At the bottom, we put lines for the buyer and the seller to sign and date. And then what we do with this is, with the addendum, I have space to clearly identify the specific report and the item number. So the general inspection, the report item numbers, the other reports, the mechanical inspection report, the pest control report. So I can clearly write everything out so I don't have to use shorthand, I don't have to cut corners, I don't have to abbreviate. I can make everything as clearly as possibly written. So I think that if you've got a list of things and you want to be very specific about what the buyer's requesting, using an addendum is your best thing that you can do. So when if you're a new agent, you're seeing report item 7.2.3 on a building inspection report, your building inspectors on their report summaries, or just even in the reports, each of the sections of the house that they have inspected, they are going to identify it with some sort of title and number system. So that's what I'm referencing with these numbers that you see here. Again, it's just very clear. It's very clear. It's very hard for anybody to read this and get confused and messed up. So you want to make it as hard as possible for someone to mess it up. All right, moving forward, more basics. Specify the specific type of contractor and professional that you want to do the job. We got a comment in the chat. Dale was sending me a direct message. Yes, he believes that he was at this inspection. Yes, Dale, you were at this inspection. Yeah, you were a brand new agent at the time. I forgot about that. Inspection. Okay, yes. Specify the type of contractor professional that you want to do the job. So going back to my example that I gave, let me X out of this. Going back to this example, let's see here. This item here, 7.2.5, seller to have electrical utility company. So I didn't just say seller to have contractor move that. I didn't just say seller to have electrician move that. I specified that we wanted the electrical utility company to move that. Let's see, for the roof, we said qualified roofing contractor. We didn't just say handyman. We didn't just say seller to do this. Down on the mechanical inspection report, seller to have qualified HVAC contractor. So the reason why you want to specify all this is if you just say seller to perform following repairs and then you list out the repair item numbers and this description of the repair issue, if you're not specifying who the seller has to use, then the seller could just be free to just do it themselves, or just have Joe in the truck handyman who, you know, lives around the block to fix it. Or their, you know, unqualified brother-in-law to come over and do it. Like that's, if you don't specify, creates a situation where the seller could do a very sloppy job and you won't find out that they have done a sloppy job until you show up for the final walkthrough. So, and then if you're at the final walkthrough, that means you're only a few days away from closing, and then it's a nightmare for you to resolve that situation. So if you want things done specifically, you want them done a certain way professionally, make sure you specify the professional that your buyer wants the seller to hire to have that work done. Specify if needed, wanted to be done under permit. That, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that that would, you know, you would run into issues with that, but if it is something that needs to be done under permit and you're worried that the seller may cut the corners on doing it under permit, specify that you want it done under permit. Otherwise, they may avoid doing it under permit. Why would you want to specify that they do it under permit? If it's, maybe you have a buyer who is, you know, perhaps they're buying this house and they have intentions to, you know, gut the bathroom and redo it, or they have intentions to redo the kitchen or something like that, and they know that they're going to have government inspectors in the home to do all of those future projects under permit. Well, those inspectors may find that the repairs that the previous owner did as part of their inspection notice, they may find that they did all that stuff without a permit, and then they may hold your buyer responsible for correcting those things not done under permit. So if there are, oh yes, and Dale is also raising the point about when they go to resell this property, if the previous owner had not done these things under permit, the future occupancy inspection that they have to do when they go to sell, they may get stuck with having to take responsibility for the previous owner not doing that under permit. So, and the other thing too, with doing it under permit is you can be sure that the seller will do it correctly, so it doesn't come up as an issue in the future. If you don't specify it being done under permit, a professional plumber may still offer the other party solutions to repair that. One solution may be the solution that's required under permit. The other solution may be something that wouldn't be allowed under permit, but would, it would get by and it would at least correct the problem. So if it's something that needs to be under permit, you should specify that if that's what your buyer wants. Also, specify paid receipts and lien waivers provided prior to closing. This gets messy too. So down here at the bottom of my addendum, I've put in here all work to be done by qualified professionals prior to closing, and all paid receipts, lien waivers, and warranty documentation provided prior to final walkthrough. This seems like something that's easy to forget, and there are many agents that do forget it. This can create issues for the title company if they're aware of major repairs that have been done. This can create issues for your buyer after closing if there were major things done and you didn't get copies of all the paid receipts and lien waivers or warranty documentation. It also reinforces to the seller that they got to get all this stuff done, so that way after it's done, they can get all the paperwork taken care of and provided to the buyer. You don't specify that they need to provide all this paperwork to the buyer prior to final walkthrough or prior to closing. They may leave all these repairs to the very end prior to closing, and then the rush to get all this paperwork prior to closing before the seller is gone and unreachable forever, that can just be kind of a nightmare scenario for not just the seller and the buyer, but the agents involved as well. So even if you are on the seller side and the buyer doesn't request this in their inspection notice, that doesn't mean that it won't still be a headache for you and the title company and your seller prior to closing. The paid receipts and lien waivers, those can be things that the title company will require in order to issue clear title prior to closing. So even if the buyer doesn't request this on their inspection notice, it still may be required, and so it still may be an issue. So I think best interest of all parties, if it's stuff that may be required as part of getting clear title on the property, you definitely want to make sure you got your paid receipts and lien waivers, at least all organized. Even if the buyer doesn't request you turn them over to them, you'll at least want to have those organized for the title company in case the title company needs them. So that's another best practice. All right, let's get back into the PowerPoint here. All right, other things when you're making your request on some basic things, roof issues. An issue that comes up a lot is a buyer requests a roof replacement or a shingle replacement on the roof, and they don't specify what shingle type and color that they want. So we've had issues where the sellers just cutting corners and trying to make it as quick and easy for themselves. They'll do the cheapest shingle that they can get. So that may mean it's a different color, it's a different shingle type. So specify that if your buyer is concerned about that. Sewer lateral issues, specify the repair type. If they want a total replacement of that sewer lateral line, specify that, because the seller may just decide to go with a liner or vice versa. Also with sewer lateral issues, make sure that you are requesting a rescope or a re-cameraing of that sewer lateral line, and you're requesting that the seller or whoever the responsible party is, repairs any remaining issues after that rescope or that re-cameraing. What can happen is, if that's not specified on the inspection notice, the seller will do the repair, and then maybe they are doing the rescope, and they do the rescope, and the rescope reveals that there are remaining issues. Well, if you didn't specify that the seller is to repair those remaining issues after the re-camera or the rescope, then your buyer may be stuck with remaining issues. Sewer lateral issues are things that can get, drug out till the final days before closing, especially when there are government sewer lateral repair programs being used in order to execute those repairs. Those things can be last minute items, and that rescope, that re-camera, it could be, morning of closing we've had it. It could be a couple days before closing, and if that re-cameraing reveals remaining issues, then you got a giant headache right before closing. So make sure that you are specifying that there's going to be a re-camera or a rescope, and the seller is responsible for repairing any of those remaining issues. If that is what your buyer is, if that's their intent of this inspection negotiation. You may have a buyer that says, hey, I just want the seller to do this and do the rescope, and I'll take responsibility for anything that's left. You may have a buyer that does that, but most buyers, when they are negotiating a sewer lateral repair or replacement, they intend for that to be, totally fixed and issue free at that, once it's all done. So the other thing here, gas line tests. And I'm actually going to go to a resource here that's right in the room. Laura, isn't it true if it's like Spire and they find issues, they'll shut the gas off, but they may not repair the actual issue.
They're actually not that expensive to repair it, and usually can do it on site.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
so, I mean, it saves you money shopping around.
Okay, all right. But like an HVAC contract, will they not turn off the gas? Yeah. So, just yes, keep in mind the gas company. If they find an issue, they could shut off the gas. And in Laura's experience, they will do repairs. Maybe not all of them, but some of them they will do, and they may not be that expensive compared to other HVAC contractors. But that has been an issue before, where the gas inspection has revealed issues, and the gas company has done it where they've shut the gas off, but they have not corrected the repair, and then the seller is stuck with the house with no gas. Yes, and then as Laura just reminded me, there's another fee for them to come back. So just keep that in mind when you are making your gas or mechanical repair requests, that depending on the company you request, they may not be able to get it all done. They may shut the gas off or not. So be prepared for that. All right, another tip for negotiating inspection do's and don'ts. And this is especially important, I think, in 2021, because your buyer may have to accept homes without maybe all of the municipal occupancy inspection repairs being done, maybe none of them being done. I think before you send over your inspection notice list of requested repairs, find out what occupancy inspections will be requiring or will be inspecting as part of the occupancy requirements for that property. So many of these municipalities that do occupancy inspections, they will have a checklist or some sort of guide on their website that you can use for educating your buyers and your sellers on what to expect them to look up. Also, keep in mind that there are certain areas of town in the greater St. Louis area where there's not only an occupancy inspection, but there could be a fire district inspection too, or a sewer district inspection. There's areas in Jefferson County and in West County, St. Louis, where you've got not just the municipal or government occupancy inspection, but you've got another inspection on top of that. The reason why you want to look this up is when you are deciding on the list of inspections for your buyer to request the seller to do, if you are very confident that that inspection item may be required by the occupancy inspection, then is that something that you need to prioritize on the buyer's inspection notice? Maybe it still is. And that goes down to my bottom point. Occupancy inspectors are flawed. So don't rely 100% on them because they are inconsistent. Now, my middle point here, stickers. I have noticed that there are some building inspectors that when they find items with the outlets or the switches or just other things in the home, they are tagging those things with stickers. And occupancy inspectors, if those stickers are still in the home, when the occupancy inspector goes in there to do their occupancy inspection, they are noticing those stickers and they are walking straight to it. So it's kind of like a red flag for those occupancy inspectors. So maybe the building inspector that you like to work with already does stickers, but maybe they don't. Maybe that's not something they do. And maybe you should keep some stickers handy to put stickers on the outlets that aren't working, or the light switches that aren't working, or the smoke detectors that are out of date, or whatever it may be. Make sure that those things are being flagged if possible, so that way the occupancy inspector doesn't miss those things. So does anybody use stickers? Feel free to comment in the chat if you're using stickers. I've seen stickers being used more and more and more. And I've noticed it has been helpful with the occupancy inspectors that are inconsistent, and some of us like to call them lazy. Some of us like to comment on, you know, whether or not they are good at their job or not. But they could be useful for you. All right. When you are crafting your inspection notice, here's an exercise for your buyers. Take that inspection report summaries. So I say that, but I meant those inspection report summaries. So your general building inspection report, your mechanical inspection report, the termite report, sewer, all that stuff. Take the summaries of all the major issues and divide those repair items into different categories. Top one, major. Those are things that your buyer does, you know, just absolutely will not buy the house without those things being fixed. Make sure that those things, those are probably going to be like your, you know, dangerous electrical panel, your, you know, 20-year-old roof with a whole bunch of leaks, your sewer lateral line that's collapsed and, you know, it's causing constant backups in the basement. Those are, or there's like a major gas leak in the house. Those are going to be major issues. Serious issues, the next one down, are things that your buyer definitely wants to pursue getting a repair as a priority. So those are things that they could still be willing to buy the house without those things being done, but they are definitely a priority. The next one down is medium. These are things that ideally you would want the seller to address, but the buyer could live with it if they had to. And then the last one is the things that they can live with, they can deal with themselves. So put them into those categories. Tell your buyers to do some homework once they get the inspection reports and put them into those categories. And then once they have put everything into those categories, right away, first thing you do is remove all the things that they say I can live with. The reason why you just remove those things that they can live with is in a market like this in 2021, they're not going to get anything out of a seller that a seller thinks is just a waste of time. You're going to have sellers that are going to say, well, it was fine for me. I live with it. I dealt with it. It was never a problem for me. So if you've got a lot of silly stuff on your inspection notice, that's how the sellers are going to react. So when you're working with buyers, don't waste your time including those types of items on your inspection report. Those are the types of things that an experienced listing agent is just going to read and just be like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, and that's just going to kind of disrupt the negotiation. You don't want disruptions to your negotiation. You don't want distractions. You don't want people's emotion getting into it because they're reacting negatively to petty stuff. So remove the small stuff and focus just on the others. Now, what you focus on the others, remember, when you're working with buyers and when you're working with sellers, per our contract and the way that the inspection negotiation works, at any point in the inspection resolution period, so basically that's the subparagraph 3 and paragraph 10 of the normal building inspect or the normal sales contract. So that subparagraph 3, that's the paragraph that says that the buyers can request repairs, and then they've got, as blank and standard in the contract, they've got 10 days to resolve those requested repairs. The way it's worded, though, is the seller can always go back to that initial request and accept that request at any point in that resolution time period. And they can, if they accept that initial request of repairs, then the inspection negotiation contingency is resolved and you're moving forward. So when you're working with buyers, make sure that initial list has, at a very least, at a very minimum, the most essential repairs the buyer wants in order to move forward. If you're working with sellers and you're worried that the inspection negotiations may be falling apart, consider that the sellers, if they want to lock this deal in, they don't want to lose this buyer, they can always go back to the initial request that the buyers provided, and they can lock in that deal and move forward out of the inspection negotiation. So that fact that sellers can always go back to accept the initial request. That is why I reinforce it's in the best interest of both listing agents and buyer's agents to have that requested list as clean and clear as possible. The reason why you want it to be as clean and clear as possible is if the seller does decide that they want to go back to that initial list of requested repairs, you as the listing agent or the buyer's agent and your colleague on the other side of the deal, you want to make sure that that is clean as day or clear as day and clean as possible. Sorry, I'm fumbling. You want to make sure that that is crystal clear, so that way there's no confusion over what the seller is agreeing to and what the buyer is locked into. Make sense? If it's confusing, if it's sloppily written, if it's, messy handwriting, it's, if the seller goes back and accepts that initial request, then going forward in the rest of the contract, it's just going to be a headache of like, oh no, the buyer meant this by that when they wrote that, or the seller interpreted it as this. And we've had a few situations where, we're just going back and forth for the remainder of the contract negotiation until closing, trying to resolve what exactly the seller agreed to and what exactly the buyer, intended by that initial request of repair. So make sure that that's clean and clear. All right. Other strategies, 2021 or not 2021, I think the strategy is don't put too much on there for the first list because it may scare sellers away. So in a even healthy market or in a buyer's market, what some buyers will do is they'll put a whole bunch of stuff on that first list and they'll just play volleyball. They'll play tennis. They'll say, all right, here's this giant list. I am prepared for you to send that list back to me with a whole bunch of stuff removed. And we're just going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until we get something solid. That is a strategy that some buyers will use. And that works when there's not that much competition and there's not much fear of the sellers being like scared and like wanting to like, move on and get away from that buyer or just like start rejecting. So I think in a seller's market like this, as a buyer's agent, you should not put too much on there on the first list because it just may scare the sellers off. Consider the existence of backup offers. The other day during sales meeting, I presented the importance to, I believe it was over Zoom, but we may have been off Zoom and just talking in the Jefferson office at that point.
Hello.
As a listing agent, if you can tell a buyer's agent during the inspections, hey, tell your buyers, don't ask for much because I've got backup offers. I've got backup offers at your same price. I've got backup offers.
Do you want to say May?
As is.
Like end of May?
You want to be able to tell a buyer's agent that, hey, don't waste your time with, requesting a whole bunch of stuff.
What do you think? How do you feel about that?
Is, not going
or
to.
We could say, yeah. So say maybe beginning of June. What would you think is adequate?
Okay, I think that was. Sorry, I'm trying to listen here on the TV. I think maybe Dale was talking about maybe one of his deals in the background there. So I apologize. All right. Anyways, backup offers. You want to basically be able to say to a buyer's agent, hey, tell your buyers don't ask for a whole bunch of stuff because I've got as is backup offers. I've got backup offers at the same price. I've got backup offers that, have said that, they're only going to request repairs for the sewer lateral line or the roof and not everything. So the other thing that you can do on strategy, if you are trying to decide what to put on your list, how to craft your list, red herrings. So if you don't know what a red herring is, I guess, an argumentative tool or a negotiating tactic. It's something that is or is intended to be misleading or distracting. So what do I mean by misleading or distracting as a red herring in terms of inspection negotiation? When you're creating your list, maybe you put some stuff on that list that your buyers aren't really prioritizing, and you're hoping that you can get the sellers to say, okay, I'll do this thing that that your buyer actually wants them to do, but I'm not going to do these other things that that your buyer doesn't actually care about. So you're using that as a tool because you know that the seller is going to be looking at that list and trying to eliminate things off that list. So you throw some red herrings on there, hoping that you can get the seller to basically remove those things from consideration and get them to focus on the things that are actually important to your buyer. So that's a strategy. So an example of that would be, okay, there's a plumbing issue and an electrical issue. Your buyer has a family member that's an electrician. So the electrical issue, while it is serious, your buyer has a connection that will help them resolve that after closing. But your buyer doesn't have a connection on resolving that plumbing issue. So you put both the electrical issue and the plumbing issue on the inspection negotiation, and you hope that the buyer or the seller will say no to the electrical thing and, put more consideration towards your plumbing request. So that would be an example of a red herring. All right. Other things for negotiating tips for this year in this market 2021 on the offer up front. One thing that a lot of buyers are doing is they're writing in the special agreements that they only want to exercise their right to negotiate inspection notice resolution repair items pertaining to specific things, like I referenced before, pertaining to the sewer or the roof or the furnace. Or maybe they will only exercise that right to negotiate inspection notice repair items if those items are going to cost in excess of a certain amount of money. So that is a strategy that a lot of people are doing. Another strategy that a lot of people are doing is they are removing the subsection paragraph 3 of the paragraph 10 building inspection paragraph. So basically they are saying that we will do our inspections and we will have the right to proceed forward, or we will have the right to back out of the deal and get our earnest money, but we will not demand that the sellers honor any sort of negotiation for the inspection repairs. So that is another thing, is they're just removing those requirements to allow them to negotiate. They could also remove the requirement of the seller to perform one or more of the occupancy inspection requirements. So when I say one or more, it could just be, just your standard, county or municipality occupancy inspection, but maybe it also has a fire district inspection. Maybe it also has a sewer district inspection. So maybe you're removing the seller's requirement to perform that. Another thing that I have seen is buyers asking the seller to order the occupancy inspection or the fire district or sewer district inspection, but not asking them to make those repairs, only for them to deliver a copy of those inspection results to the buyer. You can manipulate the you can manipulate the contract and the special agreements to ask them to provide provide proof of those inspection results within a certain time frame. You can do that. You got to be careful of what time frames you demand to the seller, because with occupancy inspection delays on ordering and scheduling, it may not be feasible or possible for the seller to provide those occupancy inspection results within that requested time frame, but it is a strategy that you can employ. You could also ask the seller not to take responsibility for certain items that you were like 100% confident are not going to fly on the occupancy inspection. Decks are a big one. Like, I think if you're an educated agent and you've dealt with occupancy inspection and, old decks, you may be able to identify that the deck is certainly not going to pass occupancy inspection as it is currently, and occupancy is going to require repairs or replacement of that deck. You could write in there that, the buyer's only requiring seller to, honor their occupancy inspection responsibilities for anything except for the deck. So that's something you could write in on the contract. let's see. Another thing you can do, like I was referencing earlier, when you're writing your contract up front, you could ask the buyers to shorten that inspection window up front. So that way they can get it over and done with quick. The reason why you may want to do this is if there are backup offers, it may be in the seller's best interest to have those inspections done real quick, so that way they can move on to backup offers quickly. What happens sometimes with backup offers is, you know, new listings, they tend to come on the market in like kind of like week cycles. A lot of listing agents, they want to put their listings on sometime midweek, showings start end of the week, weekend, and they get all their offers and it's under contract, you know, by the first or second day of the following week. And then kind of the cycle starts all over again on this weekly cycle. Well, what can happen is the backup offers that are in place, they will kind of drop off and they will basically remove their backup contract status and release as a backup contract in those week cycles, because they found this house and this was the best house they found, but after a week there may be more listings that are on the market and they might have found something better that they decided to move on, and so they kind of drop off in those week cycles as new listings come on. But if you can shorten that inspection window and you can get your primary buyer to make their decision on their inspections quicker than 10 days, you might be able to get a final answer from that primary buyer and potentially move on to a backup buyer before that backup buyer decides to back out and move on to something else. So shortening your inspection window up front, that can help you with your backup offers and taking advantage of those. The other thing too is writing in up front that the buyers are going to take responsibility for repair items that are cited by the appraiser. So now I will say, need to be careful about this, because there are things that will slip your mind on, you know, what would be responsibility for repairs, you know, cited by an appraiser. Recently, we had a situation where we had a conventional appraiser cite asbestos flooring in a basement. There was also a sewer lateral repair included as part of that contract negotiation. So the total cost of responsibility for those repairs, once you factored in a sewer lateral repair plus asbestos flooring and the remediation for the asbestos flooring, the cost of that project was pretty expensive. So it was a good thing that our buyers were not taking full responsibility for that. So just an example of something that could happen if you are writing that in. Be wary of those things that may come up. Traditionally on the appraisal issues, it's FHA and VA. So it's you know, damaged roofing shingles, it's peeling paint, it's, you know, plumbing with like active drips and leaks that the appraiser can see when they flush the toilet and they run the sink. It's things like that that are traditionally the issues with the appraisers, but there are conventional appraisers that will find issue with certain things. So let's see. All right, let me throw it back to the group. Does anybody have any other ideas or questions or anything like that?